Good morning. So the question I have for you today is, have you seen a change in your business? And what I mean by that is as a result of the current economic climate. Because something that I have noticed, especially after speaking to a number of different businesses, and I am seeing a real shift now. I think there is a clear downturn in the economy. And there are lots of talks in terms of the property market, particularly on the sales side. House prices, the value of house prices are coming down. They're obviously trying to balance that out by reducing interest rates so that ultimately people can then still be able to purchase and try and stabilize it. But there is a risk that we could be back in a recession, back to the level that we were in 2008 and 2009. And I'm no economist, I'm no expert in that side of things, but I remember that time. I was working for a law firm. I was actually at that point, I was effectively just qualifying as a solicitor. And at the time, one of the actions that firm took was they actually reduced all of the staff salaries by 30%. And that's a pretty major cut in terms of people's salary. And at the moment, for example, we are in a time where actually, if you started cutting people's salary, people were going to be going below the poverty line. People are struggling to make ends meet as it is. So if as a business you took that type of decision, I think that could have catastrophic effect on your staff, and particularly in relation to morale. So what I really want to know is, how are you feeling the economic climate at the moment? Is business booming for you? Or are you in a situation where actually you're struggling? Because to be perfectly honest, I've seen a massive knock-on effect where effectively businesses, when they're not being paid by their customers, they're not then able to pay their suppliers. And it has this whole chain reaction, which I think for a lot of smaller businesses that often work, on a hand-to-mouth basis, they're often experiencing this whole feast or famine situation. It's actually a really scary time. So how do we actually build resilience, and how do we move forward in such uncertain times? And there are a number of ways. And I think the thing is this message isn't just for the business owners. This message is also for all of your friends and family and all of your contacts, because we need to more than ever support small business. If you look at your local high street, what shops are you seeing? Like, for example, I have seen recently, just near where I live, that there are high street shops that are shutting because they just can't afford to continue anymore. You've obviously got the big chains like Wilko, who are also struggling. And I haven't read the most recent thing, but I know they were going into administration. There is a lot of uncertainty. So the key thing I would say to you, to all of my audience, is shop local wherever possible. Feed those local businesses, because ultimately the actual small business is the backbone of our economy. Support policies that actually then support small business, because I think sometimes there is this whole, and I'm not going to go too much into politics, but there is this whole mentality about feeding, helping the rich rather than the poor. And it's not, to me, it's not even about that. It's about just supporting small business owners, entrepreneurs, because ultimately, actually, the large proportion of those are the ones that actually are providing the staff locally. They are the businesses that are, like I say, the backbone of the economy. And without those, we are ultimately really in trouble in terms of economic uncertainty. So I think in terms of talking to those business owners that are out there, You need to be more open-minded in terms of your strategies. I think you've also, one of the things I often see is the digital marketing world is often completely ignored by a lot of businesses. And I think it's so important to have multiple sources of work coming through. So I see a lot of businesses that are purely reliant on one source, like for example, referrals. And it's great to have a fantastic referral scheme, but you need to be able to make sure that you're protecting yourself and you've got other places where people are hearing about you, because ultimately you need to protect yourself as much as possible. You need to be able to adapt in terms of, new opportunities. And ultimately, this is a crucial time that you really do need to be aware of your numbers. You cannot leave it until the end of your financial year to hear your numbers from your accountant. You need to be tracking them now. You need to know how much your staff is costing you. You need to know what your rent for your premises is costing you. You need to know each individual expense. Where could those be cut back to be able to actually, get through this current uncertain period of time? And you may have to make some very, very hard decisions. For example, I was recently having a conversation with one of my clients, and they are questioning in terms of about whether they reduce their staff. And that's often there's usually one of two things that get cut in uncertain economic times. It's staff redundancies, potentially reduction in terms of your premises, and the third thing is in terms of your marketing budget, right? In terms of your marketing budget, the piece of advice that I have is, before you cut it, look to see what is actually working for you. Because, for example, you could be spending £300 a month on Facebook ads, but you're actually getting a huge amount of new clients that are converting from it. So the worst thing you could possibly do is cut your ad expenditure, because it's actually generating you work that's converting, right? So you just need to be aware of, when you're looking at your marketing budget, yes, cut things that aren't working, but don't just do a complete blanket cut, because I promise you it will cut you. Basically, you're cutting your nose off despite your face. But look at all of your expenditure. How can you potentially cut that expenditure down? If you need to make those harsh decisions to survive and get rid of staff, then make sure you follow the correct HR procedures. And sometimes what you have got to do as a business owner is you've got to look at yourself first, and it's about you surviving through these potentially very challenging times. Now, it's hard when you've got really solid, reliable, loyal staff, because you know that they're going to struggle to potentially find something. But unfortunately, you have to sometimes make a business decision to be able to survive, because it would be far worse if, for example, depending on the size of your team, if you got rid of, say, one or two members of staff, and it meant that you could get through this turbulent time, compared to making that decision of keeping them, and actually then everyone loses their job because the business doesn't survive through it. So you're going to have to make some hard decisions, and you need to be literally pulling on your friends, your family, and saying to them, please, can you kind of get my name out there? Because the thing is it might not necessarily be your friends and family that need your services, but you've got to think of, I'm not, for example, with BNI, I'm not a member of BNI. But one of the key things I do remember is this image of one person, then it having their network of people around that person, then their network around their, that network, and so on and so forth. So you don't know who is within your contact base who could be actually, they know people who are looking for your services, but they're not necessarily 100% certain in terms of exactly what you do. So be talking to those people that are in your, your contacts, in your network, and saying, do you know anybody that would potentially benefit, and help increase your sales? Because ultimately, in terms of these challenging times, the key ways you need to be able to cut it, cut those expenditure is, or cut, you're looking at your finances is by reducing that expenditure wherever possible and trying to get those sales up. Now, there'll be certain businesses that right now people won't be looking at your services because they are very much a case of, they might be seen as luxury, but I tell you now, there is always opportunity. It's all about adapting. It might be the fact that you change who your ideal client is, because there will still be people out there who do have money, who will be able to purchase your services. So be adaptable, make sure you are 100% on top of your numbers, cut your expenditure wherever possible. Be mindful of what you cut. Look at, as I say, in terms of your marketing budget, only reduce the things that are not working. Be 100% certain before you make those cuts. And if you want somebody to come in and do a review and give you some guidance in terms of how you can potentially survive this recession and this economic climate, then make sure that you book in a free strategy session with me, and we can actually start going through that and seeing how I can potentially help you get through these challenging times. So any questions, please put questions in the comment. Please do DM me, but I hope that today has given you some value, because the one thing I am really seeing at this moment in time is that, there is a significant change in the economic climate. And I'm not an economist, I'm not an expert, but I think it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. So you need to be prepared. So make sure you shop local, support your local businesses, make sure you're adaptable, and make sure you keep on top of your numbers. Speak soon, everyone.